Hi there, Isha here, and welcome to The Higher Life, where I take concepts considered esoteric, spiritual, new age, and psychological, and unpack how you can extract the wisdom of these, apply it in your daily life, so you can live in a truly empowered way. And at the moment, this is the call for humanity, isn't it, really? If we look out on to the global stage, there is so much conflict and destruction and despair and hatred and ignorance playing out that is increasing this deep existential anxiety that's really holding humanity in a form of tyranny. And in order for us to start resolving and dissolving some of this archaic and outdated way of engaging with each other and come into a united humanity, we really do need to empower our lives from the inside out. But what does that actually mean? I know when I started out as a transformational life coach, and at least for the first 5 years, I found it really confusing when I would hear things like, transform your life from the inside out. You have everything you need within you. What is within is without. And I look out onto the global stage and I think, well, I'm not like that. I don't feel that level of suspicion and hatred and desire to really destroy other human beings in the way that I see it playing out on the global stage. And the way that so many of our leaders are really psychologically immature and how easily we empower them to make decisions on our behalf. Well, that's not me either, so it doesn't really gel. So it took a long time for me to really come to understand the mechanics of personal empowerment and what it means to be truly empowered and how we can transform our reality from the inside out. So, in this episode, I want to ask you, are your thoughts creating heaven or hell? Because you look out on the world stage and, it feels like there's hell happening. Which means that within ourselves, something must be going on that is still manifesting this type of tribal way of operating. We see environmental degradation coming, high levels of spiritual malnourishment, not to mention the ongoing wars, that are recreating the same kind of hatred that has already existed for centuries. So it doesn't really seem like a very useful way for humanity to be using its ingenuity. So what does it really mean? Heaven and hell, and how much power do our thoughts have to create our reality? Now, if you follow the trajectory that you have the power to manifest your life in a particular way through the quality of your thoughts, you're already going to be blindsided, I guess, in terms of what I want to bring forward today. If you've been raised like I have, or educated in a way where you really believe that it's up to you to manifest a particular type of lifestyle or results in your life, and that comes down to the quality of your thinking. So, if you're not generating the kind of results or success that your culture thinks you should, somehow it's your fault because your thoughts aren't really at the kind of quality they need to be. And that then takes us into a whole inner critical journey of what is wrong with me and why can't I live the sort of life that I see my peers are, or my friends are, or my colleagues are, or people on influencing sites such as Instagram are. There's this whole messaging about what a successful, healthy, prosperous lifestyle looks like, and it really has very little to do with our personal power. However, if you do believe that my thoughts create my reality, or reality in that very external way, it's about what you can manifest. And trust me, in the life coaching, spiritual manifestation world, there are a lot of people running around with deep connection to, I guess, their spiritual nature, but are still wanting to use that power to manifest certain results in their life. There are whole spiritual communities in which part of the teaching is about how can you generate a business that is spiritual in nature. And it kind of sidesteps the point that everything is spiritual in nature. Our dysfunction and our higher self is spiritual in nature. What we produce out there in the world has a spiritual nature to it because it exists. Anything that exists comes from this intelligence that simply manifests ideas into form. So there is a kind of science to that. However, when we talk about are my thoughts creating heaven and hell, what we're really referring to is an internal experience of being alive. Who is this I that I believe I am, and how do I treat this self? And I think we're all very familiar with the more mainstream way of treating our inner world, and that is, I have a vulnerability, I feel insignificant or insecure in some sort of way. It's very fragile, vulnerable, insecure I that I am. And when I hit a wall, or I don't perform the way that I would like, or somebody criticizes me, this escalates and I become triggered and feel even more insecure, and I'm in hell. Let's just say that. Maybe it's a beautiful sunny day, I'm with friends, work's going okay, but I'm still in this hell because I can't stop thinking about all the ways that I just aren't living up to the life that I thought I should be experiencing. It's very painful. It's a really, really powerful affliction to have, and it is living in hell. So the only way for us to actually use our thoughts in a very conscious way to create heaven is when we make the shift from no longer meeting our natural vulnerability and insecurities with this inner critic, even if this inner critic has this agenda to really help us step up and achieve in our lives. This is a false source of support, and it really just undermines our true beauty, authenticity, and inner power to actually live in a much more natural, relaxed, and illuminated way. We don't need to achieve or be productive or more effective or less lazy in order to show up in a truly empowered way in our lives. We simply need to adjust to being more natural, to be more aligned with the natural environment, and to soften the hold that our inner critic has over us in our internal experience of being an I, which is really psychological. Everything I'm talking about here, it's psychological. Who you think you are is a psychologically created sense of self that has been influenced or really shaped by the family system you were born in and the cultural system you were born in, the gender, the time of history. There's all these forces at play that create this sense of self that is really fabricated. It's made up. Yes, it does work with some of your natural persona, which is made up from your archetypal patterning. However, it's really manipulative, and you can spend your whole life thinking that that's who you are and what you need to achieve and how you need to perform and how you haven't met those expectations, and not even realize that it has nothing to do with your true self. However, it is a process of revelation. You need to turn inwards, and you're like, okay, what is my psychology telling me about who I am, the value that I have, what makes me happy? Where does it come from? Where did I first hear that? Is it really true for me? What happened in the generations that made up my family legacy up until now? Could they have played a part in what I value, what I'm afraid of, who I think I can be and who I think I can't be? It's so interesting when you start exploring who am I through this experience of being born into a system that already has all these beliefs about it, and you're just kind of picking up the baton and charging forward and living your life without even questioning whether that is really true for you. So this self-exploration, this turning inwards, that's what turning inwards is. It's like, no, I'm no longer going to just respond to the world out there and meet these expectations because my culture tells me that's what I should be doing, it's what it's going to make me happy. I'm going to recalibrate my psychology. And yes, you need tools and processes to do that. But the most important one, the most powerful one, is how you speak to yourself and meet yourself in times of suffering, struggle, and insecurity. When you are in hell, do you just reinforce hell by saying, yes, I could have done better. Yes, it's your fault that you had that extra biscuit. Yes, it's your fault that you unleashed on your daughter. Maybe I'm thinking about my own life. You could have done better, but maybe you couldn't have done better. It's far more comforting and empowering to have someone who comes in and asks, well, what was going on for you right then at that moment? Oh, you were tired, overworked, feeling unsettled. Oh, the biscuit made you feel better. Or, well, one of your really core values was stepped on. You were spoken to in a way that didn't make you feel comfortable. It's natural to get your back up and to want to defend yourself or to correct somebody who you think needs to be corrected. These are natural tendencies that we have. It's part of our humanity. It doesn't mean that we should always be acting them out, but we need a tenderness, a compassion, a curiosity to really meet that experience, that vulnerability, that suffering, that triggered self with a desire, a genuine desire to extract the wisdom, the learning, the clarity, not so that you can then do better next time. That's the ego stepping in, so that you can really come to understand your own humanity in a far more tender way. Because we are human, and humanity is a sensitive system. It's a very vulnerable system because it's very creative, and it needs to experience a range of experiences in order to fulfill its creative potential. So we're highly sensitive beings, we're relational, we are easily triggered. It's part of that creative process, but we can manage it in a far more mature way. And a really mature parent doesn't condemn her child for being a child. She absolutely celebrates the spontaneity, the openness, the truthfulness. But if that child is in a process of maturation, she may come in and be with that child through that process of self-examination or exploration, so the child can think, I love that I'm really vulnerable, but I don't really enjoy when my vulnerability gets the better of me in this type of circumstance, and I'd love to relax, so I might breathe next time. There's these beautiful ways that we can really work with our vulnerability that is very empowering, but it requires the loving parent. And when we have this experience, hell, it's transformed into heaven, because you can live inside your own psyche and feel really comfortable about the way your psychology operates. You understand that much of your psychology is driven by patterns that are really outside of your control, and you can learn to align and work with those patterns in a far more sophisticated way. And that is becoming empowered. It's the same as when you try to play a violin and you have no experience. It sounds scratchy and horrible, but the more you practice and the more mature you become in the way you show up with this instrument, the more beautiful and seamless the music presents, and we can become that finely tuned instrument. But you have to attend to it with love. Any musician that simply criticizes the instrument is probably not going to want to show up for it, the player, in any particular healthy way. So, same as parents, when we're constantly criticizing our kids, they don't want to show up for us anymore. They hide, or they overperform, but they lose all touch with their natural spontaneity and joy of being a human being. They become a tool in some sort of productivity dream that we're all living, where that seems to be a good thing. We really need to break out of this kind of dysfunctional way of viewing our own creativity. And I think that's something that I speak to a lot here at Higher Life TV. So yes, our thoughts do create heaven and hell, but not in the way that you believe. It begins with hell is our own experience of our own psychology when we're meeting it with the inner critic who only condemns our natural vulnerability as being a human being. Heaven is when we meet our natural vulnerability with a deep desire not only to celebrate it, but to tend to it with a deep compassion, curiosity, and friendliness. And that just makes our inner psychology so healthy and robust and vibrant, and we become exceptionally loving beings towards ourselves, and that naturally translates into all the relationships that we have. So of course, if every human being were cultivating heaven within their own psychology, we would see that translate out onto the world stage. So, I'm doing my part, and I'm joining millions of human beings out there who are doing the work that I'm doing, meditating, seeking a more peaceful and prosperous way of being human in the world, turning inwards and cultivating heaven as part of their psychology, knowing that this will help the whole collective of humanity shift into a higher state of consciousness. And yes, out in the world, we're seeing really dysfunctional psychology. However, I'd like to reassure you that a lot of the psychology that we're seeing and the results that are playing out is the end of an old way of being in the world. It's centuries of human beings that have been living in this deep distrust of the other and carrying those stories over. But each generation, they are more challenged, more explored, and they're loosening their grip over our psychology, and we will move out of them. So, what we see in the present is often the result of the past. So if we want the future to look different, it's in the present that we start to make the shift. And the biggest one is dissolving all identification that has human beings thinking that they belong to a tribe that is different to another tribe. It's really difficult to perceive humanity as one united species, but we are a single operating system, an intelligent system, a relationship intelligent system. So, the quicker that we align with that natural intelligence, the quicker we'll see humanity step into a higher capacity of compassion, friendliness, curiosity, playfulness. The future human, I think we have no idea at this point in time what we're really capable of, but I sense we're going to be much lighter, far more sensitive beings who can really commune, and when that old way of really criticizing and condemnation will just seem like ancient history. Should I put it that way? Anyway, if you love the work I'm doing here, I've started a new podcast called The Pearl Effect, where I really guide people through the process of personal transformation, looking at the what is it, how does it work in a really operational way, who is best positioned to really do this work at this point in history, and why is it so important. So head over to The Pearl Effect, I'll put the link in this episode as well, or check out Higher Life Academy, where I guide you through a 3-step process to live your soul purpose. So until next time, I really hope that you spend your days transforming hell into heaven, cultivating more of that inner capacity that we have to live in a really friendly, tender, compassionate, loving way with our own psychology. So until next time, take care and love life.